Chapter 25. Blast from the Past and Into the Future. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is Chapter 25 of my What If Ash Met Meowth First story. If you're new to this series, click the link in the description below to be taken to the playlist. Now let's begin the next chapter. The next month and a half leading up to the Indigo League are a cavalcade of one small adventure after another for our heroes, as they train and prepare for the biggest competition yet. After meeting up with Gary for the first time in ages at Professor Oak's lab, the elderly professor is quite pleased to see the two getting along so well. Even letting it slip that Gary still carries around his half of the Pokeball that he and Ash had fought over way back when they were little. This surprising revelation causes Ash to let slip that he's kept his half too, causing everyone to laugh at how similar the two really are. Along with the two boys reconnecting over this little childhood memory, they also end up reminiscing over their childhood memories of playing in the Xanadu nursery after Delia asks Sash to pick up some things that she needs. While there, they also help the new owner of the nursery, Florina, regain her confidence and get back at Team Rocket for scamming her. However, not all of their adventures during this downtime involve the brunette. One of these adventures being the group of friends meeting a surfer and his Pikachu. This adventure ends with Misty's Horsey evolving into a Seadra, and her new Poliwag having his first battle. Another adventure sees Ash and his friends helping the production of a movie before then being flown out to PokeStar Studios to watch its premiere. From the moment they take their first steps onto the paved, sparkling streets of PokeStar Studios, Misty is eager to see her Psyduck on the silver screen, while Ash can't help but notice that something is off with Meowth. Concerned for the Pokemon, he asks him what's wrong, only to be given a shrug and an unconvincing smile. Nothing, kiddo. He's only seen Meowth like this a handful of times, and they always had something to do with his past. He knows that Meowth didn't grow up in a good environment, having been mistreated by Pokemon and humans alike from an early age. But he also knows Meowth well enough to know that he hasn't told Ash everything, and this is clearly one of them. Or maybe it's one of the things he's alluded to but never gone in depth with. Like when he told Ash and Misty about how he learned to walk and talk like a human. Before he can press the issue, Misty calls Ash and his trio of Pokemon over, distracting him for the time being. As the group look for where the screening of Mr. Spielbunk's movie is supposed to be taking place, they find themselves walking into a really run-down part of town. Ash eyes their surroundings warily, and is about to tell everyone to stay alert when Meowth makes a comment about this place having really gone to the Growlithe. Seizing on this chance, he asks if Meowth has been here before, trying his best to sound nonchalant. Before the Scratch Cat can answer, however, Togepi begins to wriggle in his arms, wanting to be put down so he can walk on his own. Heaving aside his attempt at finding out what's bothering Meowth once again being thwarted, he puts the baby on the ground. Before he lets go of him, however, he instructs him to stay close and not go wandering off on his own. He only releases his hold when Togepi nods with an affirmative cry, letting him trot along beside him, Pikachu, and Meowth. Before Ash can turn his attention back to Meowth, Brock calls for them to hurry up as they've found the theatre. Ash calls over to them to hold their Ponyta. It's not like they're going to be late or anything. With his attention on his friends, Ash doesn't notice as Meowth slips away into a side street. Togepi does, however, and remembering Ash's rule about not going off alone, takes off after him, not wanting Meowth to get in trouble. When Ash reaches his friends, he turns around to try and get back to matters more important than a movie that he didn't even want to participate in the first place. Only when he does, the street behind him is completely empty. No Meowth, and no Togepi. Meowth sighs as he looks at the snack stand that is all too familiar. This part of town sure has seen better days. He's pulled out of his thoughts by an oh-so-familiar cry and turns around to see Togepi running towards him on his tiny little legs. Startled at seeing the baby, Meowth asks why he's not with Ash and Pikachu. Togepi puffs out his cheeks in a pout, telling Meowth that he followed him because Papa said that they can't go off on their own. Meowth blinks before sighing in fond exasperation while petting Togepi on the head. He's then taken aback when Togepi looks up at him with worried eyes, asking why Meowth is so sad. Meowth sighs and tells Togepi that this place just brings back bad memories. He didn't mean to make Togepi worry. Togepi holds out his little arms, asking if Meowth wants a hug. Meowth's eyes widen for a split second as the question brings back another memory, one filled with happiness, warmth, and the promise to never leave. He picks Togepi up and places him on his hip, allowing the baby to wrap his arms around his neck and bury his face in Meowth's fur. Hugs make everything better. If only more people thought the way your papa does. My life would have been a whole lot different. Togepi pulls back slightly, giving Meowth a quizzical look that clearly says that he wants to know more. So, Meowth tells Togepi a story. A story of an abandoned little Meowth and his search for a place to call his own. He'd lived on the streets of a small Unovan town that he doesn't remember the name of. His first memory is of being alone and hungry, crying out for someone to help him. He'd been so hungry back then that even a basket of baseballs looked appetizing. But whenever he tried to get food, the humans and Pokemon around him would punish him for it. Togepi looks at him sadly, asking why they didn't just give the poor Meowth something to eat. If he was so hungry that he was even going to eat baseballs, why not help him? Meowth smiles sadly at Togepi, telling him that to them, the Meowth was just a troublemaker causing a mess, and they didn't want to look past that impression. It's sad, but some are just like that. He continues his story, telling Togepi how he'd seen a movie that had delicious food in it, and how it had inspired the young Meowth to go to PokeStar Studios in hopes that he'd find food more plentiful there. He looks back at the snack stand and frowns, telling Togepi that the Meowth was in for quite the rude awakening. Even in a place full of food, still, no one cared for a poor, hungry Meowth. No one stopped to give him some food or a kind gesture. All they did was yell, call him names, and throw things at him. Until, one day, he met a group of Meowth being led by a Persian. They fed him and offered him a place amongst them. All he had to do was help them steal whatever they wanted. It wasn't friendship, but it was an agreement that Meowth could understand and follow. One that would keep food in his belly. Togepi huffs, saying that that's not very nice. They shouldn't have forced Meowth to steal for them in exchange for food. That's mean! The Persian is a stinking mean pants. Meowth chuckles at the indignant pout on the little one's face before continuing. The Meowth's days continued on like that for quite a while. His belly was full, but there was still one thing missing. Companionship. For while the gang were his allies, they weren't his friends. He still longed for someone to care about him. One day, he met a beautiful female Meowth who belonged to a wealthy woman. She was the most beautiful Meowth he'd ever seen. But sadly, that beauty was only skin deep, for she was a shallow, vain, selfish, and cruel individual, only caring for the beautiful and expensive things that her owner could buy for her. However, blinded by her beauty and his longing for a companion, Meowth failed to see her for what she was. So, when she told him that she only wanted to be with a human, he decided to make himself into one the best he could, in hopes of gaining her affections. But once he'd taught himself to walk and talk like a human, the female Meowth crushed his heart even harder than before. Now, not only was he a penniless stray in her eyes, but a freak. Togepi shouts angrily, calling the female Meowth a stinky poopy meanie jerk with no friends. How could she say that to Meowth after everything he went through just to please her? His grandpa walks and talks like a human, and he's one of the coolest and best people Togepi knows. He sniffs, tears forming in his eyes as he asks Meowth why the story has to be so sad. Smiling softly at Togepi, Meowth brushes away his tears. He assures him that the story does have a happy ending. He just needs to listen for a little longer. However, before he can continue, they are surrounded by a very familiar group of Meowth. Meowth pulls Togepi a little closer into his side as a Persian steps through the group to stand in front of him. Long time no see, boss. Meanwhile, Ash and Pikachu are walking through the streets, looking for Meowth and Togepi. After discovering that the two had vanished, Ash and his friends had decided to skip the movie to look for them. Mr. Spielbank had protested, saying that without them, there'd be no one to watch his movie. Ash had told him that if it's that important to him, then delay the screening until they get back. But he is not leaving his family to wander the streets alone and possibly lost. They'd split up to cover more ground, with each of them calling out their flying Pokemon to search from the sky. Ash and Pikachu are just passing by a snack stand when Pikachu stops and sniffs the air. Turning to him, Ash asks if he's picked up on something. Pikachu sniffs more, moving around in slow, methodical circles until his ears perk up in recognition. He's picked up on Meowth and Togepi's scents, but there's a lot of other scents here too, similar to Meowth but not quite. A group of other Meowth? Ash asks Pikachu to follow the scent. There's a good chance that the unfamiliar scents belong to wild Pokemon, and that could mean that Meowth and Togepi are in trouble. With a nod, Pikachu begins to lead the way, following the trail as fast as he can. Meanwhile, Meowth is standing in the old junkyard that the gang calls their base, Togepi clinging to his leg as he hides behind him. The look on Meowth's face is cold and unwelcoming, as he asks Persian if he thought any of this little plan of his through. Sure, he can understand why Persian wants him to join them again. With him being able to walk and talk, he'd be quite useful to them. But did it ever cross his mind that Meowth would have no interest in joining them again? It's been a good 5 years. He's not the same Meowth he was back then, and he's got no interest in joining up with them again. Persian smirks and asks not even for her, while tilting his head to something, or rather someone, behind him. Meowth looks in the direction that Persian gestured and his eyes widen in surprise. For there, sitting amongst the other Meowth and looking so uncertain, is Meowsy. Soon, Meowth is sitting on a cardboard box across from Meowsy, who's sitting on an old crate. Togepi is sitting in his lap, glaring at Meowsy as best as a little baby can glare. Clearly, his dislike for the Meowsy in the story has transferred to the real one. Not that Meowth can blame him, he's not particularly thrilled to see her again either. Still, he asks her how she ended up here, running with his old gang. She explains to him how her old owner had abandoned her after the businesses in the area began to go broke. She'd been a house Meowth since the moment she hatched from her egg, so she had nowhere to go and no means of caring for herself. She hadn't wanted to join the gang, but what else could she do? Meowth looks at Meowsy long and hard for a good few minutes. He's honestly tempted to call this karma and just walk away. But then he remembers a different Meowth. One that had done far worse than say a few mean words, but had been offered a hand by a kind and loving pair of humans, who asked for nothing in return but his company. He sighs. Then he looks at each and every one of the wild Pokemon that surround him, contemplating if this is a good idea. But then, he realizes that he couldn't really face his kid again if he didn't at least try. So, taking a deep breath, he tells them that they don't have to stay in this dump if they don't want to. They may not have been friends, but they did keep him alive when otherwise he would have starved. And Meowsy may have been a stinky, poopy, meaning jerk with no friends. Meowth gently places a paw on Togepi's head in a silent gesture to quiet him down and not interrupt, but doesn't contradict his statement. He continues on, saying that if they wanted, he could get them out of this situation. His kid is always willing to help out Pokemon that are in bad spots, and he knows the family of a Pokemon professor, so if they're willing to clean up their act, they could help them find trainers, good trainers that will take care of them and treat them right. There's a long moment of silence as the wild Pokemon take in what he just said. Then, Persian glares at Meowth, asking just what happened to him. Trusting humans of all things? Has he forgotten that it was humans that attacked them every day when they were just trying to eat? Has he forgotten that it was humans that abandoned them? Meowth has truly gone soft. It was a mistake to offer him a place amongst them again. With that, he orders his underlings to attack Meowth and his little brat. Make sure they won't be of any use to any human. Meowth quickly jumps to his feet, pushing Togepi behind him to shield him from the Pokemon now advancing on them. However, before the Meowth can pounce, a familiar voice calls out a thunderbolt. In seconds, the space between Meowth and the wild Pokemon is struck with the electricity, forcing the attackers to take several steps back. The moment the electricity dissipates, two blurs, one yellow, the other blue and black, drop down from one of the junkyard's mountainous piles of trash to stand between Meowth and the gang. The figures stand tall, revealing themselves to be a Pikachu and a 10-year-old boy. Back off, flea bags, unless you want to see what happens when you mess with our family. Pikachu growls at the wild Pokemon in agreement, his expression set in an angry snarl. Meowth grins as Togepi gives a happy cry before running to Ash, allowing the boy to lift him up into his arms. Meowth moves to stand beside the boy, jokingly apologizing for missing the movie, to which Ash shrugs and tells him that he didn't want to see it anyway. He then shoots Meowth a glare, telling him that if he's going to apologize to him for anything, it'll be wandering off, getting kidnapped by these thugs, and making them worry. Meowth concedes, doing just that, a lot more seriously than his previous apology. Their attention is drawn back to the gang as Persian growls at them, asking Meowth if this is the human that made him go soft. Ash glares at the Persian, telling him that while he doesn't speak Pokemon the way Meowth speaks human, he can tell that whatever he said was insulting. He turns to Meowth, asking if he wants to show his old friends what he's learnt in the 5 years he's been gone. Meowth asks how he knows about him having a history with the group, and Ash admits that they'd overheard some of his conversation with Meowsy and put the pieces together. Meowth sighs before agreeing with Ash's statement. With assent given, Ash grins. Well then, Meowth, Pikachu, let's give these jerks a show. Dark Thunder! Just as they have so many times before, Meowth and Pikachu unleash their combined attack, sending black lightning straight at the gang. The attack hits them dead on, sending them all to the ground. Not knocked out, but not getting up anytime soon. With that done, Meowth turns back to Meowsy. He's just about to ask what her answer is to his question when she runs right past him into Persian. After checking on the larger cat, she turns to Meowth, explaining that it wouldn't be right for her to just leave after he helped her when she'd hit rock bottom. Besides, he's still a freak, so anyone that's willing to keep him must have a few screws loose. Upon hearing the translation for that comment, Ash's expression turns dark as he glares at her with eyes hard and full of hate. Can I punt her? Please? I want to punt her like a football. Ash, no. Ash, yes! Seeing the disaster waiting to happen, Meowth grabs onto the Raven's jacket and begins to drag him out of the junkyard and away from the wild Pokemon before he can attempt to act on his anger. It isn't worth Ash feeling guilty for the next several days for giving into his anger just to get some petty revenge on a stuck-up brat. As they leave the junkyard and begin to make their way back to the theatre, Meowth turns to his friends and family. With a soft smile, he tells them that while he's sorry he got them caught up in that, he's also grateful to them for worrying about him. Ash turns to him with a grin. Anytime, Dad. The moment the words register, everyone freezes. Meowth stares up at Ash's slowly reddening face, his brain feeling like the Dedenne that makes it work is taking a lunch break. Pikachu has a strange look on his face that's a mixture of shock, disbelief, and unadulterated glee. Like, he can't decide whether he should be slapping himself to make sure that this is actually happening, or laughing hysterically. Togepi is just looking around at them all in confusion, not understanding why they're all reacting like this. Like, what Ash had just said wasn't the biggest bombshell Meowth has ever heard. Meowth's brain is just starting to thaw, and he's just starting to ask if Ash really said what he did when the Raven begins to speed walk down the path, head down and face flushed. You had nothing! Meowth and Pikachu race after him. Pikachu seems to have finally come to a conclusion on what reaction to go with because he's laughing so hard there are tears forming in his eyes. Meowth, on the other hand, is smiling a soft, warm smile. At long last, the time has come for the group to make their way to the Indigo Plateau. Bidding goodbye to Delia, they begin a suspiciously quiet trek to the League. On the way, they come across many different people, including other participants and the man that is the flame bearer for this year. Yet there's still one group that is suspiciously missing. Where is Team Rocket? This little mystery is solved the moment the group walks through the door to the Pokemon League building. For what greets them is the sight of Jessie, James, and Porygon dressed like Uenda, waving a large flag with Ash's name on it and shouting, "Go, Ash, go!" The little group all just stand there for a few minutes in complete shock as Team Rocket continues to cheer so loudly that the people on the other side of the foyer can hear. Then, Ash gets this look on his face like he's not sure whether to laugh, cringe, sigh defeat, or bang his head against a wall. I'm not sure if I should be feeling disturbed by this, or just grateful that this probably means that they're going to be leaving me alone for the duration of the league. Moving on quickly in order to get away from the awkward situation, they make their way to the registration desks. There, Ash and Misty check themselves in, while Meowth holds Brock back from trying to flirt with the staff. After getting registered, they watch as their randomized battles are determined. While Ash gets an older teen named Mandy as his opponent, Misty sees a very familiar face pop up on her screen. The whole group is surprised to discover that Tyra has entered the league as well. The receptionist tells them that Ash's battle will be at 1 o'clock and Misty's will be at 2. This news makes the best friends smile, as it means that they'll be able to watch each other's battles. Needing to kill some time before their matches, the group decide to have a walk around Pokemon Village to get some lunch and look around. While they're out, they run into Gary, who's also having some lunch, and invites them to join him. Noticing the distinct lack of loud, obnoxious cheering, Ash asks where Gary's cheer squad went. Gary shrugs, saying that they left quite a while ago. For some reason, they didn't seem interested in cheering him on these days. Something about boosting humble people not being fun or something? Shrugging again, he shifts the topic to ask if they know what field they're going to be fighting in for the first round, and against who. Ash tells him that he's up against someone called Mandy in the water field, while Misty explains that she's facing off against an old acquaintance of theirs on the rock field. Gary tells them that he is on the ice field for this round before asking if they've decided what Pokemon they're going to bring. Ash explains that he's already got 2 of his Pokemon decided, he just needs to decide on the 3rd. Meowth shoots him a look, telling Ash that he'd better not be considering him as an option. He has had more than enough water battles, thank you very much. Ash holds up his hands in surrender, assuring Meowth that he wasn't, before turning to Misty and asking if she's decided on her team. Misty shakes her head, explaining that with the field being rock, it's going to be hard for half of her Pokemon to move on it. So she's going to need to decide on which Pokemon to bring and if she needs to switch in Poliwag. Their conversation is interrupted by a teen with teal hair and wearing ruffled clothes, who laughs that they seem pretty laid back for people who are about to lose in the first round. Recognizing the teen as Mandy, Ash tells him that it's rude to eavesdrop and it's highly disrespectful to comment on the abilities of people who aren't even his opponents. Mandy condescendingly apologizes for his rudeness, commenting that he should be nicer since he's going to be humiliating their friend in their match. Ash turns to Gary with a flat look. Wow, and I thought you had an ego. If this guy's head was any bigger, I think it'd have its own gravitational pull. That comment causes everyone at the table to burst out laughing while Mandy glares at Ash. With a huff, he spins on his heel and storms off, making Ash roll his eyes. Ugh, how extra. But it did help him decide on what Pokemon to bring into the match. He's going to trounce this snob. No one speaks to his friends like that. And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave this story for now, since this chapter is getting a little long. Join me next time as the first round of the Pokemon League begins in earnest. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.